George's death will weigh on his son and Georgie and Mandy's first marriage. There's a lot on his plate. The upcoming Young Sheldon spinoff, Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage, isn't just carrying forward the lighter moments of a new couple's chaotic domestic life. It's also stepping into deep emotional territory, especially where the late George Cooper Sr. is concerned. While the new show promises a blend of heart, humor, and growing pains, George's recent death in Young Sheldon will leave an indelible impact on his son, Georgie, an emotional thread the spinoff won't be able to ignore. Even though The Big Bang Theory first introduced George Sr. as a somewhat caricatured figure of an absent, heavy-drinking father, Young Sheldon spent years rebuilding his image, turning him into a compassionate, tired, but loving dad trying to do his best. For Georgie, who is now a young father and husband himself, stepping into George Sr.'s shoes is more than just daunting. It's the weight of a legacy he's barely had time to grieve. That emotional burden and the struggle to carry on his father's best lessons while avoiding his worst mistakes will be at the heart of Georgie and Mandy's first marriage. The ghost of George Sr. is a constant presence. Even though Georgie and Mandy's first marriage is being pitched as a comedy with a family-centric flair, fans expecting a sitcom free of grief might be surprised. George's absence will hang in the air of every parenting decision Georgie makes. He's no longer just a teenage screw-up who dropped out of high school. Now he's a father to baby Cease and a husband trying to build a life that makes sense. With his own father freshly buried, Georgie is at the age where the loss isn't just painful, it's transformative. We often forget that, in Young Sheldon, Georgie arguably had the closest bond with George Sr. next to Sheldon. The two shared quiet moments of mutual respect, especially once Georgie began helping out at Medford Tires and started understanding the realities of adulthood. George Sr. wasn't perfect, but he gave Georgie the foundation to be dependable, hard-working, and loyal, all things he'll now have to embody without his father's voice guiding him. There's a lot on his plate. Pressure builds from all sides. In the immediate aftermath of George's death, Georgie will find himself emotionally stretched thin. Not only is he mourning, but he's also navigating the messy beginnings of married life. Mandy, as sharp and sassy as ever, won't be content with Georgie emotionally shutting down. Their dynamic has always been one of push and pull, and now, with grief in the mix, the friction will intensify. But it's not just Mandy who will expect Georgie to step up. His entire family, especially Mary and Missy, will look to him as a male figurehead in the Cooper household. There's a lot on his plate, series co-creator Steve Molaro said in a behind-the-scenes interview. He's grieving, but he's also trying to prove he's not the same dumb kid who got a girl pregnant. He wants to be a man, the kind of man his dad was becoming. That's a heavy arc to carry in a comedy, but that's where the emotional richness comes in. The very title, Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage, hints at the instability and pressure of their young relationship. The phrase, first marriage, is cheeky, sure, but it also implies that things might not go smoothly. Grief has a way of complicating even the healthiest of relationships, and for Georgie, still figuring out who he is, the journey will be messy. Georgie is haunted by what he didn't say. One of the subtle but most powerful themes the show can explore is regret, not over what Georgie did, but what he didn't do. After George Sr.'s death, Georgie will have to live with the knowledge that they never got the chance to have a real father-to-father conversation. George saw Georgie become a dad, but they never truly unpacked what that meant. Georgie was too busy working, adjusting to Mandy, and just keeping things afloat. There's dramatic gold in that kind of emotional, unfinished business. Expect scenes where Georgie tries to parent Cease and realizes he's doing exactly what his dad did, sometimes the right thing, sometimes not. These parallels will hurt, but they'll also become a source of growth. Mary's grief complicates everything. Another way George's death will echo into Georgie and Mandy's first marriage is through Mary. As the Cooper matriarch reels from losing her husband, she's likely to lean harder on Georgie. This sets up potential tension between Mary and Mandy, with Georgie stuck in the middle. Mandy, a fiercely independent woman, won't appreciate Mary inserting herself too often into their marriage. But Mary, grieving and spiraling in her faith, might see Georgie as the only male figure left to keep her family grounded. This dynamic will serve up ripe storylines that are both poignant and combustible. On one hand, Georgie will want to be there for his mom, but on the other, he has a baby and a wife who need him just as much, if not more. George's death doesn't just leave a void. It creates a gravitational pull that threatens to destabilize Georgie's carefully stacked life. The mirror effect. Georgie is becoming his dad. One of the most intriguing narrative directions the spin-off could take is the idea that Georgie, despite all his fears, is becoming more like George Sr. than he realizes. The series can play with flashbacks or dream sequences, showing George Sr. in the moments when Georgie feels the most lost. Maybe when Cease won't stop crying, or when money is tight and the stress is boiling over, Georgie imagines what George Sr. might have done. And sometimes it's comforting, other times it's terrifying. He might fear that he'll repeat George's mistakes, emotional unavailability, poor communication, giving too much of himself to work. But he'll also recognize George's strength, showing up when it counts, taking the hits for his family, making hard choices for people he loves. Those moments of reflection will be essential in establishing Georgie as a fully realized adult, one shaped as much by loss as by love. Mandy's role, more than a support system. While George's death will obviously impact Georgie the most, it will also shape Mandy's arc in unexpected ways. She never had the chance to know George Sr. well, but now she's married to his son, raising his granddaughter, and watching grief sculpt the man she loves. That's not easy. Mandy will have to learn to navigate a Georgie who isn't just immature and stubborn, he's wounded and maybe emotionally distant at times. That will challenge her in ways she didn't expect. She'll grow too, not just as a mom, but as a partner, learning that love sometimes means holding space for pain you can't fix. There's potential for a beautiful scene where Mandy, holding Cease late at night, tells her daughter stories about the grandfather she'll never meet. It's in those small, quiet moments that the show can pull tears just as effectively as laughs. Humor won't be forgotten, it'll be sharpened by heart. Of course, Georgie and Mandy's first marriage is still a comedy, and the showrunners are smart enough to know that humor can often be the best vehicle for healing. The show won't be all doom and gloom. In fact, many of the funniest moments will likely come from the absurdity of young parenthood, diaper disasters, in-law invasions, late-night baby colic therapy, all peppered with Georgie's trademark dopey charm and Mandy's sarcastic wit. But what will separate this sitcom from its predecessors is how grounded it remains in emotional truth. Just like young Sheldon elevated itself by exploring complex family dynamics under the umbrella of humor, Georgie and Mandy's first marriage can do the same, with George's death serving as a silent but steady undercurrent. A legacy of love and laughter. In the end, George Cooper Sr. might be gone, but his presence will live on in every episode. Whether it's Geo,